Developing the confidence to have difficult conversations at work concerning mental health is a really important area to consider. We have 822,000 people signed off with workplace stress. We've seen an increase to domestic abuse helplines of 61%. My name is Michelle Fisher, and I'd like to talk to you about how you develop this confidence, and I'm going to use an acronym, NAS, N-A-S. N is for notice, A is for approach, S is for signpost. So first of all then, thinking about what it is that we want to notice. How will we know if it would be helpful to have a conversation? And I'm going to break that into 3 areas for you. When we start to feel challenged with our mental health, these 3 areas are the ones that most often show up. The first one is our emotional landscape. We have 60,000 thoughts a day. All different kinds of emotions are available to us. Happiness, pride. It's also healthy to feel sad, upset, angry. But what if we get stuck? What starts to happen if we're challenged with our mental health is we become stuck with difficult emotions. We are stuck around things like maybe shame or anger, frustration, disappointment, sadness. Sometimes it may even be a complete disconnection, just not feeling that sense of connection with people or with work and what we're doing. And what we want to be able to get a clue to is, how is a person thinking? We're not looking necessarily at how confident somebody is or how extrovert there is, because this also can be very, very healthy to be a quieter person. So maybe somebody doesn't want to go to the company quiz or something like that. They prefer to spend time by themselves. That's okay. What we're looking for though is if they're struggling with their self-esteem. So this is more about whether somebody feels valuable. Do they feel that they're contributing? Do they feel that they matter, that they're making a difference? And we're listening to the kind of languages that they're using. So listen to how your colleagues are talking in particular about themselves. Some of the really unhelpful thinking traps, for example, are catastrophizing. So this is where maybe something's gone wrong, maybe there's been a problem, or maybe there's been a complaint, but actually is your colleague exaggerating that? Are they making it a much bigger problem? Or are they taking issues and then using those to predict that everything is going to go wrong in the future? The worst possible scenarios of what could happen. So catastrophizing. Another thing that you might notice is labeling. How do they describe themselves? When we start to hear really critical words, people calling themselves incompetent, not capable, making fun out of themselves, but in a really negative way, those can be the kind of things that you can start to notice that can be a clue to how somebody is feeling, what kind of emotions are happening for them. The second one is around physical fitness. There's a very, very powerful connection between our physical fitness and our mental fitness. If we become challenged and we are having difficulties around anxiety, stress, depression, then we will start to have real chemicals released within our bodies that over time can do real damage. It can actually lower our immune system, which means that we are vulnerable for genuine illnesses and problems. Think for yourself, where do you hold your stress? Some of us, it's headaches, isn't it? Or maybe somewhere in your physical body, shoulders, back problems. For some of us, it's stomach related. So it might be issues around digestion, but most of us have some form of early warning system. So something that starts to become an issue with our physical fitness that may be a symptom of our mental health. So we take care of the headache, but if that's a symptom of mental fitness challenges, then it's quite likely to recur and it may well get worse. So one of the things that you can notice is how are your colleagues physically? Are you noticing any changes? Maybe you've noticed that they're having more time off and that sort of thing. So there might be something that gives you a clue there. And then the third one is their behaviour. We absolutely know that challenges with mental health will affect how we behave. It's actually quite difficult sometimes to see what emotions people are having, and difficult to see physically what's happening to someone. But you will notice behavioural changes. It might be that somebody becomes more easy to become angry. They might be really easily irritated. Maybe they're starting arguments with you, and there's problems that you wouldn't normally expect. It might be that they've become much louder. Maybe they're more physically aggressive in the way they stand or their body language, this sort of thing. So looking out for if you think people have become more aggressive. But it might not be that. It might be that, in fact, they're withdrawing more. Maybe they've become much quieter. Maybe they're not engaging with you. Maybe they're not making eye contact with you. Maybe they're not responding to you the way they used to. You know, just not engaging, just not answering, just not showing up the way that they ordinarily used to. So those are the kind of things we're looking out for then. We're looking out for changes in how they feel about themselves, in their physical health, and in their behaviour. And those are the things that might indicate that it would be really helpful to have a conversation. So that's your notice. What about approach? Check in with yourself first of all, just to be sure. Do you feel comfortable to approach this person? Does it feel okay to you for your own well-being to start the conversation with this individual? Especially perhaps if this is someone who's become quite aggressive. You may actually prefer to flag this up to your manager, to share what it is that you've noticed, to maybe encourage them to open up the conversation on your behalf. And what would be helpful in that case is to give facts. It's very difficult for a manager to start a conversation on sort of summarised version of it. Try and say exactly what did somebody do? How did they behave? What was it that you've noticed that's made you concerned? If you do feel okay to approach the person, you do feel okay to start a conversation with them, then think about what's the best way to do that. What's going to be a comfortable way for them to be able to talk with you? It's always best if you can do this face to face. When you've actually had the conversation, think about how do you want to end it? One of the big barriers in opening these conversations is we worry, don't we, that once somebody opens up and starts talking to us, how do we actually close that conversation? How do we bring that conversation to an ending that feels okay for us both? And it might be helpful if you've identified at the outset that you have 10 minutes or 15 minutes or something like that, so that you've already set what's going to be appropriate for you. And then thinking, what are the kind of things that you could maybe be aware of? Do you know, for example, with your employer, do you know what kind of employee assistance might be available? Is there any kind of support? Have conversations, find out the kind of things that are available. Think about in your community, in your local area, what kind of support might somebody be able to get outside of work? What are we at Mind doing, for example, that might be something useful that your colleague could engage with? Well done noticing and approaching somebody and having the conversation and being prepared to listen. What we want to look at now is signposting. Many times we're hearing from people who are supporting colleagues that actually that is impacting our own mental health. This is not about behaving the same way as you would for friends or family. These are colleagues. If you are also a personal friend, then what you're doing to support that individual needs to be separate from work. The kind of tools that you can use are knowing about services in your local area. It might be, what are we doing at Mind that could be helpful for somebody? Do you have the phone number for the Samaritans? Everybody can call the Samaritans. either because somebody's in a crisis and needs that kind of help, or maybe they just need time to talk to somebody. And we don't always have that much time, especially in the workplace. So having a phone number that you can pass to somebody where they can be listened to. Some companies have employee assistance programs. So it might be possible that your employer offers a confidential helpline that your colleague could call as well. Being aware of these things, I shared with you at the beginning about the huge increase in domestic abuse. And if that is something that's concerning somebody in your workplace, there is a specialist helpline for that, with people who are specially trained to support people who understand just how difficult it is to make those phone calls. So there we have notice, approach, and signpost.